Welcome to Cover Report Live. I'm Dan Odess, CEO and founder of GlobalPro, here with you on the Recover Report Live. We started a little bit late today. Why? Because things are busy. It's very active out there, and if you're not paying attention to your insurance and your coverage and all things related to the tropics, then quite frankly, you are not prepared. You need to be prepared. We preach it all the time. That's our mantra. Make sure that you are being prepared, by making sure what you need, by contacting us, letting you know how we can help you. If you haven't already, check us out online at globalpro.com. We've managed more than $1 billion within loss and damage for thousands of community associations and business owners throughout the country and abroad. Whether you are in the Caribbean, or you're in Texas or any other Gulf states, whether it's California or Florida, the Carolinas, New York, let us know how we can help you, and we can be there, boots on the ground, ready to respond. Well, today's topic is pretty general. I just want to make sure and preach to you all about being prepared and making sure that you have what you need right now as we head into the busiest part of the storm season. It's September, and it's the kickoff to where we see storms cluster up in the Atlantic, also in the Pacific and the Gulf, and cause mass devastation throughout. If you look right now at the modeling, you're going to see many areas of interest in the Caribbean area, and it's really important that you are paying attention. But not only in the Caribbean, but also in the Gulf area, as well as in the Pacific Ocean. There's activity all over the place, and some of them are 10, then they become 30% and 40%. They go back to 10, they move, they got arrows going left and right, and you're thinking to yourself, what am I supposed to be paying attention to, Dan? What is most important to my community association or business? Well, I want to take a step back and talk about the moral and ethical obligations of the representatives for insurance companies for a minute, because we have seen a rise in the approach, this antagonistic approach by insurance company adjusters, where they seemingly think that they possess the authority. And again, I've mentioned this many times in prior episodes where we talk about this very thing. Role players, who's doing what and what their obligation, and what is your obligation as a policyholder. But let's for a minute take a deeper look at the role of the independent adjuster or company adjuster for an insurance company, particularly the field adjuster, and contrast that with the representatives for insurance companies that are actually back in the main office in some other far-off place that's seemingly just looking at records and documents and information that's provided and probably taking cues or direction from a claims manual. That's, again, making coverage determinations not because they are actually boots on the ground at your property, but because they're given certain corporate directives as to how this insurance company is to respond to things regardless of the conditions or issues at your particular location. They do coverage analysis, mostly done by attorneys, in finding loopholes or issues or pitfalls in the policy that may limit, exclude your coverage. They're not there to work for you. They're there to work for the insurance company. And the independent adjusters that are in the field almost always do not possess any sort of authority. In fact, a lot of times they are a third-party administrator, a TPA, or an independent adjuster that's, some sort of contract individual through a corporation that is the TPA working on behalf of the insurance company. So you see the layers of the onion here, and that onion is bitter as hell at the core. So you want to make sure that when dealing with this, that you're saying the right things, you're doing the right things, and you're acting appropriately to make sure that you're actually protecting your own interests so you don't get the bitterness of the core of corporate America and the profit center in which a lot of times, unfortunately, we find these claims departments acting as. So let's take a step back. Let's understand what is needed in order to be able to administer the claims process on behalf of the insurance company so we can appreciate the position the independent adjuster is. Now, they're not all bad. They're not all out there to get you. In fact, most of them aren't. Most of them are empathetic to your situation. You've had a major loss. But there are some sour apples. And then also there's others that, well, while they have very good, let's call it bedside manner, and their approach is not antagonistic, the way in which they document things may not be in the best interest of you, the policyholder. Why? Because, quite frankly, they're not there for you. Now, in the state of Florida and other states throughout the United States, it is requirement for these adjusters to actually provide to you a copy or have on them a copy of their license so that they can actually prove who they are and that they are appropriately qualified to handle your particular type of loss. Excuse me. Weather change and allergies are happening, and I'm not immune to it, and I'm certainly getting affected by it. But that's all because of seasonality. We're seeing a ton of rain, right? So as you're seeing more rain, more winds, more extreme storms, particularly in the Florida market as well as in the coastal areas, you need to pay particular attention to the condition of your property, because in the event that something happened, these individuals, again, are looking really for what may lead to some sort of issue or create some sort of issue in your claim itself. Now, they may say they're discharging their duties and they're there on behalf of the insurance company and they're just simply documenting the condition of property as a whole. Even though you reported damages on one side of the property, they suddenly have to go inspect the other side of the property, and then they correlate the damage on the other side of the property to what you then reported now, even though they conflate the two issues, which leads to some sort of underpayment, exclusion, denial. Again, so important. In one particular instance, we've had a major total loss fire on a property just recently, and the adjuster came out, chip on a shoulder, totally trying to tell the insured that they don't need representation. Interestingly enough, that would otherwise be what? Tortiously interfering with our contract, our representation. They have a legal right to representation, but some adjusters take this tact. They take this approach. Oh, look, I'm Mr. Customer Service. I'm there to help you through your claims process. But again, legally speaking, their license is what? Tied to the insurance company. They're there on behalf of the insurance company. So as much as they may have one customer service representation, or they may be there to help the process, they're still not representing your interest. And as a board member, a fiduciary to a community association or a business, how is it that you don't have your own representation? Because these individuals are trained by insurance companies to think and act the way they want them to on behalf of them, not you, the policyholder, the business owner, the board member, the community association representative. They're not there for you. Now, some of the things that they'll do when you initially report a loss, the claim gets assigned to an independent adjuster through some sort of TPA, third-party administrator. That individual comes out. They're there to do an inspection. And a lot of times we get questions about additional living expenses when you have extreme loss and damage to your property, particularly the total loss fire I just spoke about. There's nothing in the policy that says that we need to establish coverage and damages first before we can consider additional living expenses. Now, having covered loss most often is a triggering event to additional living expenses, but again, it's the duty and obligation of the insurance company to expediently investigate the claim and to provide us this information as quickly as they can. Make that coverage determination and pay when they could have or should have. So it's not to say that they should pay the ALE before they determine coverage, but there's nothing wrong with considering both at the same time concurrently, that the moment that they have established some sort of coverage, that they are prepared to issue payment for the additional living expenses in that regard. So why not collect all the information, review it, and make sure that the policyholder has what they need in the event that their coverage is issued to immediately make payment, like in that instance. That would be in the best interest of the policyholder. And if you're revered and you're this customer service expert that's there on behalf of the insurance company, well, wouldn't you want to be able to make sure these people have what they need in order to live? Because that's what it's about, right? Making you whole financially. They don't owe you for the sticks and bricks, or they don't typically have to pay directly for your additional living expenses, but they do owe you the value or the money for those things as pursuant to the policy. So we want to make sure that we have everything that we need to comply with their understanding of what the insurance company needs in order to be able to make payment. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's about. That's why you have insurance, is to make you financially whole. We don't so much as care about their process as we do is about what's going to trigger them to pay. And if you can do the legwork now while they're doing some sort of analysis as far as coverage of whether they owe you the money or whatever it is, Well, let's start that process. Nothing's standing in your way of doing it. I love when adjusters come out and they say, well, no, I need to analyze the building damages once we establish those and we make a coverage determination on that and payment on it, and we're going to do that. Then you submit the additional living. And it's like, no. There's nothing in the policy that says one needs to go before the other as it relates to paying for damages. So our advice to our policyholders and to all of you listening to this, if you have loss of rent, if you're a business, if you're a homeowner, you have additional living expenses, or you're a condo unit owner that's damaged by a major storm and there's water in your unit after a hurricane and it's not tenantable or livable, then these are things you need to consider. Is that while yes, they're going to have to determine coverage before any sort of payment is made, there's no reason why one set of coverages needs to go before the other. That's not the case. Even business income, a lot of times we hear about it's like, oh, we need to establish the physical damage or the loss of product before we can consider your economic damages, your income losses, whether that's profit, whether that's just gross income, whether, whatever it's staffing, extra expense. Again, not true as it relates to processing the claim. Again, establishing what your damages are so that in the event that the coverage is determined and afforded to you under your policy, that they can immediately make payment for all of these coverages, not just one before the other. And that's a really important nuance. And unfortunately, we see a lot of these independent adjusters, particularly after a major loss, whether it's a fire or a hurricane, where a lot of information needs to be collected throughout the claims process for coverage and for other reasons. They seemingly get kind of handicapped by this idea that they need to first do the physical damage, get that out of the way, make payment, do their analysis, cause and origin, etc. Oh, and then we'll start taking care of this. Meanwhile, you can't live in your property, whether it's from water damage, hurricane, mold, whatever it may be. And the reality of it is that, quite frankly, that's what you need most financially, is that support and help in facilitating that process. So again, some of these nuances, reiterating over and over and over again on these broadcasts about who's there for you. Certainly not the insurance company's representatives. They're there on behalf of the insurance company. Without representation, how have you exercised or protected your association or business? And you're a fiduciary obligation. Quite frankly, there's no way that an attorney, a duly licensed attorney that understands community association laws, that understands basic principles, corporation principles for whether it's a business or community association, can say that if I need to hire a contractor or a owner's rep or an engineer or an architect to oversee a project, and I do that as part of my business practice, whether for a community association or business, that I don't need to do the same when I have a loss in a claim at a property. Otherwise, if I was filing, similar to I was filing taxes, if I were to go file them myself and make mistakes, I take on that financial obligations and duties, right? And so then it rests on my shoulder and I expose the association or the business to a potential E&O, D&O type claims. Similarly, for a lawyer, right? Yeah, certainly you can represent your own interest in court, but are you going to do it as a typical business practice? Absolutely not. Why? Because you're a fiduciary. Again, now, the interestingly point, and something I made in a prior broadcast just 2 weeks ago, was that most often we see the claim values associated with the types of losses we managed for business owners, community association, are far more significant than most ongoing construction projects, legal issues, etc. And incidentally, though, we often find board members or business owners, oh, I want to see what the insurance company is doing, or, oh, my broker said they have claims professionals. One said a broker recently told a client of ours, oh, you don't need to hire a public adjuster because we have our own claims representatives we'll send out to your property. Interestingly enough, they kind of took the bait at first, but no one showed up. But even if that person did show up, what exactly were they going to do? Now, they're not licensed nor contracted to represent your interest. In fact, they have a separate contract which predates your contract with them as an AOR, or agent of record, which simply just says that we want that person to help us buy insurance, who's appointed by an insurance company who actually has a financial contract with an insurance company, right? Who then pays directly, most often, the commissions to those brokers. Again, you see how this is not working out to the interest of the policyholder, right? The contracts of the insurance company, the money's coming from the insurance company most often. The claims representatives that they say they have, quote unquote, on staff aren't licensed to represent you nor contracted to do it, and don't have your same interest in mind. Oftentimes, these brokers have these deals where they get bonus based on loss runs or performance of their portfolio of insurance, where they actually make money if you don't have claims, or if it's the profit is at a certain point or degree that it's favorably insurance company, they'll give them a share of it and an interest in it. Now, that may not directly boil down to the brokers themselves, but of course, the brokers are financially incentivized as well by their agencies to do certain things and act in a certain way. There's plenty of examples of it. In fact, if you actually go look at most accusations of fraud, it's not with adjusters. It's not with engineers. It's not with all this. It's with insurance agents. Insurance agents oftentimes are more prolific in committing fraud, stealing people's premiums, doing things that they're not supposed to be doing. Unfortunately, you don't hear a lot about the E&O, D&O claims because, quite frankly, what you can recover from a broker or an agent is at times limited or de minimis, or it's very expensive to do such a thing. And then you're talking about spending money that you could otherwise be reinvesting back in your association, your business. And we've seen all kinds of different claims where, or potential claims against brokers where they sold a policy to a HVAC company, someone that does mechanical, installs air conditionings, where, in a commercial building, which is fed by water, which includes water pipes and fittings, that excludes water coverage. We've seen, I've seen a plumber not have coverage to do work in a high-rise building, but yet I know that for 20-some years, this plumbing company has done work in the high-rise, but upon some renewal, the broker sold them a cheaper policy and with the idea of savings. But yet, what were they actually saving them? When the idea of insurance, the reason why you pay for it is to make you financially whole and protect you against these financial losses, and whether they're third-party or first-party type claims. So it's really important. And a recent article just came out about an engineer that has gone on a rampage to report other engineers working on behalf of policyholders, or that do quite a bit of plaintiff work, but also do work for construction companies and other stuff, and do real design work. And in this particular matter, interestingly enough, I read through this whole long article about how this is the greatest guy. He's a stand-up character, and he's done, an amazing amount of work for insurance companies. Very little information in there about anything sort of he's done outside of that type of work, which for me, calls into question the validity of really anything he's going to say thereafter. And then I come to learn and find out that this individual is actually not an engineer in the field in which he's actually rendering and providing opinions for which build the basis or become the basis for an insurance company's determination of coverage. But yet through his own independent research of reading other engineers who are actually practicing and researching in the particular field in which he's rendering these opinions that he did not get a degree in, he somehow portrays himself as an expert suddenly in that field because he's been able to read this. Well, how's that any different than if any other layperson out there read this stuff and then suddenly said, you know what, I want to be an expert. I'm actually an expert in that because I've read 15 books. And that balls into the question is, how many articles do I have to read to be able to say that I am an expert in something? And just because I hold a degree in engineering doesn't mean I'm an expert in all things engineering, right? Particularly if that is the core of my business. Now, through experience and being on job sites and doing things, yeah, certainly you can garnish some experience, but you can't portray your opinion of something better than someone else's when they actually have trained in it, right? So something to keep in mind and to be aware of as people represent themselves, particularly on the side of the insurance companies. We find this oftentimes that these engineers and contractors or these building consultants, that's my favorite, who get a fancy title working at some sort of consulting company are suddenly something more than what they want to portray themselves at because they have some sort of contract that allows them to earn a living rendering these opinions that are to the interest of the insurance company. All right, they're effectively, we like to call them hired guns. Again, they're not all created equal. There's very good people out there that are trying to do a good and honest job. It's not to say that, but there is a lot going on in this industry. And a point I continue to make is, as a fiduciary, a board member for a community association, property manager for a community association, or a board member or an owner and operator of a business, whether you're a president, CEO, vice president, a CFO, and you are making fiduciary decisions. So you're part of this fiduciary process of recovering loss and damage, money. How is it that you are doing your best or discharging your duties in the best possible way if you are simply relying on your agent or broker, number one, or the insurance company to do the right thing? So food for thought. Think about that stuff. Always join us every single week here on the Recovery Report Live. We're always hitting it hard, giving it to you straight right here on the Recovery Report Live. If you haven't already, subscribe, like us, follow us on all the social media. Make sure you do that. Check us out on YouTube. Check us out on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. We are on all the social media platforms, but more importantly, go to globalpro.com. Check out the resource section. There's tons of information there. If you ever have a question or concern about your insurance, your claim, hit us up, DM us, text message us, call us, email us. We want to help you 24/7, 365. We are all about making sure that we can manage your risk to recovery. Again, join me right here, same time, same place on the Recovery Report Live.